Good evening once again, members of parliament and the viewing public. We are back with the Central Committee meeting, the handling of the budget 2023. We've completed the parts of the Central Committee with the Ministers of Finance and the Minister of Health, Labor and Social Affairs. We now have the Minister of Romy, the Honorable Egbert Duran, who is with us to answer the questions posed earlier in this Central Committee meeting. Minister, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, honorable members of parliament, members of the media, support staff, and a special good evening to the people of Sint Maarten that are tuned in. Mr. Chairman, as the Minister of Finance mentioned and alluded to in his closing remarks last evening, the budget cuts are based on a review of previous actual spending across the board. It is noted that some of these cuts, I'm hearing myself echoing.
I'm going to adjourn for 2 minutes. Good evening once again. We had a brief technical issue that we needed to resolve. I now give the floor once again to the Minister of Romy. Let us make sure.
Testing, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was saying, as the Minister of Finance alluded to in his closing remarks yesterday, the budget cuts are based on a review of the previous actual spending across the board. It is noted that some of these cuts seem like it may hinder some agreements and or objectives. However, we intend to work within the budgetary means to meet the necessary contractual obligations. The budget 2023 is mainly what can realistically be executed within the current capacity. The ministry will monitor the monthly reports, critical to identifying any potential shortfalls as early as possible to initiate preventative actions, and the government is prepared also to make budget amendments where necessary to meet the needs of the departments and the ministries as a whole. In addition, if the revenue increases beyond our forecast, then we'll be amending the budget to reflect this and allocate funds where needed. I'll delve right into the questions posed, Mr. Chairman. I'll start with questions posed by MP Westcott Williams. Regarding the nature policy plan, when will Parliament officially receive a copy? Upon further research, a copy of the nature policy plan was provided to Parliament September of last year. And I also look forward to the invitation from Parliament to present this policy officially. What is the status of the Great Bay Hotel? As I previously mentioned, the Ministry of Romy issued a building permit to the developers which are in the planning phase of a new hotel known as Planet Hollywood project. Are there any urgent plans for the upkeep of the cul-de-sac cemetery? Yes, at the cul-de-sac cemetery, there are the following are considered urgent plans and will be executed during this budgetary year. Building of the boundary walls on the side, repair the old metal entrance gate as it is a piece of history, and also construct new gates so the cemetery can be closed. Continue to build vaults, including vaults for urns. Extend the walking path from the main entrance to the center. Construct a new and better shed for storage of materials. Work with the legal team to verify what can be done with the damaged and nameless graves to see if this can build onto these or have them replaced. The above works will mostly be done in-house by the Ministry of Rummy's operation personnel. The ministry is currently executing assessments of the public cemetery as these fall under the care of the government of Sint Maarten. Currently, the day-to-day upkeep of the cul-de-sac cemetery is being handled by the Ministry of Rummy and the operation staff. What is the status of the improvements and the development of the Clem Labega Square, including the former post office lot and the former government building? Currently, the Clem Labega Square is in the planning for upgrading and repairs to improve the parking lot in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance and General Affairs. Regarding the other lots, temporary parking has been the short-term plan from government, and as mentioned before, the lots are designated for the development of a parking garage and also the Parliament building and also other government entities. Regarding the road maintenance, what is the multi-annual contract for road maintenance and with whom? Currently, there are no multi-annual maintenance contracts. However, the ministry is researching this possibility and the benefits of this type of contract and what it can bring to the country's infrastructure. The tendered road works run annually for a contract on a yearly basis. The contracts with GB streetlights have been cut. What are the plans for streetlights in 2023? The streetlights are a priority for the ministry, and we will ensure that the operations are kept on board. I'd also like to refer to the opening statement that I made during this answering of questions. The district maintenance contract has been reduced by 1 million guilders. What is the cost of the multi-annual contracts for this work? The annual cost for the district maintenance contract is 3.6 million guilders. Only temporary work has been carried out on a contract work has not been in effect for the first quarter of this year, hence the reason for the decrease. The budget for cemeteries has been cut, hence my previous question as to how the urgent upkeep needs to take place in the cul-de-sac cemetery. Is the minister aware of the state of this burial location? Yes, I am aware. The ministry has finalized a plan in which improvements of the cemetery will be executed internally. In addition, the ministry is also looking to alternative methods that may result in lowering costs. The general maintenance cleaning of the cemetery will fall under district cleaning once that is awarded. In regards to the removal of car wrecks, this will cut in the 2023 budget. How will it be paid? Yes, the removal of car wrecks will continue as far as budget allows. In collaboration with KPSM, we will also be addressing the abandoned vehicles, which this project is already ongoing since last year. Contracts for garbage collection compared to 2022 have been reduced by 25%. Please explain and provide an overview. The operation of garbage collection is critical, as we all know, and we will ensure that these operations continue to function optimally. Again, I would like to refer to my opening remark. The landfill cuts for the management, the cut in the management of the landfill contract, it has been cut by approximately 50%. Again, I would like to refer to my opening statement with respect to the time and the budget that we have available. The sewage plan has been cut with 23%. What about the management agreement? The management agreement for the sewage treatment plant has been downscaled to essential staffing needs, comprised of personnel formerly assigned to the VROMI Operations Division and outsourced work. The allocated budget will be utilized for the payments and the purchase and investment of replacement sewage network parts and components, and that has been functioning optimally since April of last year. Is there any plans for the flagpole property? What are the agreements? The ministry is currently in discussions with the family. Any changes to the property will be dependent on our agreement with the landowners. I move on, Mr. Chairman, to questions posed by MP Gums. Could you please provide an update to the EU-related projects? By projects, I refer to the wastewater treatment plant initiative with the front side, the radar project, and the finalization of the works in Dutch Quarter. Where are we in terms of finalization? The funds from the court judgment against Winter Roads in the amount of $2 million with the permission from the OM has been requested to be reassigned to the finalization of the Dutch Quarter project. The works from Winter Roads has been relocated toward the completion of the roadworks in Dutch Quarter sewage project, which includes Section 1, as well as the main pumping station. There are many unfinished elements remaining to be completed from the previous contract. These works include, but not limited to, the finalization of the pumping station, the dismantling of the 3 intermediate pumping stations on Illage Road, the connection of the main sewage pressure line, the house connection to the main road and the sidewalks, the remaining street lights, and the complete implementation of Hodges Lane. Also the Martin Luther King School sewage connection. I would like to thank the community of Dutch Quarter for their patience and cooperation thus far, as we are in the final stages of approval of the continued works of the former company. The ministry had made great efforts to have this project realized and completed, as it was the intention when it was started. Please inform of the status of any court cases and how the pending cases will impact these projects. The court case is currently ongoing at the moment, and we do not expect for this to negatively affect the continuation of the remaining works. The ministry has committed to seeing the remaining works completed, as it remains a top priority. What is the co-financing agreement split in the sewage network expansion of 27 million guilders in the capital expenditures for the Ministry of Rummy? Can the minister please expand on it a bit more? The 27 million guilders was requested via the Netherlands for the purpose of co-financing of the wastewater treatment project that is being implemented by the NRPB on behalf of government. This project has been identified with the aim in reducing the risk of public health hazards and protecting Sint Maarten's waters from environmental degradation, preserving the country's extraordinary natural assets, and enhancing the sustainability of the tourism economy. The targeted areas of the project include expansion of the wastewater treatment plant on Illage Road, Cul-de-sac, and the surrounding areas. Also the Greater Phillipsburg and the Lower Princess Quarter area. I move on to questions posed by MP Duncan, Mr. Chairman. The reductions in salary in several departments in the ministry. Can an elucidation be given to the increase in capacity within the next year? There have been no reduction in personnel salaries. In terms of increasing capacity within the next year, an internal committee has been set up that is focused on the hiring process. The salaries of functions are tied to whatever relevant FTE and are owed and who accept the job. To those who accept the job. The management of the landfill budget has decreased. The trust fund debris management plan is still ongoing. Please explain the decrease in the management of the landfill and how will this affect the landfill. Government will still meet the contractual obligations and operations of the landfill as it is a critical operation. If this is not the case due to spending trends during 2023, the ministry will address this in a timely manner and ensure uninterrupted work takes place. Currently, a retender is taking place for the activity of the management of the landfill. I move on to questions posed by MP Rumu. We know that space and land is an issue as the island becomes more populated. Can you further elaborate on how the government is addressing affordable housing, especially for low-income families in Sint Maarten? The ministry plans to address this issue in various manners, which includes, amongst others, the strengthening of the institutional capacity of the Ministry of Housing in terms of housing expertise. The ministry also will be working on a housing policy to cover various areas of the sector, which is part of the upcoming housing project within the trust fund, as I mentioned earlier. The updating of the existing performance agreement with the Sint Maarten Housing Development Foundation will also contribute to the betterment of the housing sector on the island. The signing of the MOU to commit to review the updated performance agreement will take place in the coming days. Most importantly, as reflected in the housing vision, the development of Hope Estate and Foga is on the forefront of the development to further address the housing matters for both social homes and affordable homes. Reparation of roads. Minister, can you provide some details on the plans to further develop the island's infrastructure, including road, bridges, and sidewalks? The ministry plans to have several main roads resurfaced as part of the further development of the roads and bridges. Aside from a new layer of asphalt, the road works will contain markings, zebra path crossings, applicable traffic signs as well. The plans for sidewalk include hard surfacing with brick pavement, which will still allow water to irrigate onto the subsoil. The ministry plans to begin hard surfacing of sidewalks in the Phillipsburg area along the Pondfield Strip and also in the Simpson Bay area near the government parking lot. With regards to GB streetlights, can you please provide an update of the status of the streetlights on Sint Maarten? What is the percentage of streetlights that have been restored? When can the public expect all streetlights pre-IRMA to be restored? This information will be provided in writing after consultation with GEBE. Through many of the concerns raised about streetlights, a letter was sent to GB a couple months ago, about 2 months ago, to address the status of the streetlight situation. After further consultation with GB, information can be provided to relating to this matter at a later date regarding when all the streetlights will be back on functioning optimally. Can the minister provide an update on the invasive species management project? The project is currently ongoing at the moment. The Nature Foundation is carrying out the monkey trap test in various areas, Point Blanche, Guana Bay, and also Don Beach. In addition, there has been some first technical meetings with the French side to discuss a joint approach of the most efficient way to address the island-wide invasive species management. Follow-up meetings are planned as well for this. Mr. Chairman, I move on to questions posed by MP Brownbill. In reference to the environment and risk caused by landslides, was a risk management and protection of human life taken into consideration when preparing the budget? As part of this year's budget, VROMI is preparing the implementation of the new building codes, which will considerably improve and enforce the way we build on Sint Maarten, which will also have a positive effect on the surrounding environment and will improve the safety of our citizens. In addition, the ministry requires civil works permit for activities of profound nature to ensure that prior permitting constructions, the necessary assessments regarding the impact of nature and environment are carried out as well. I move on to questions posed by MP Heiliger Martin. In Ebenezer, the residents are waiting on streetlights. Did the minister meet with the council? No, I have not met with the council. However, it was established by GB that the cables used for the streetlight network in the area was damaged beyond repair, primarily because the incorrect cable was used back then. This means the entire network of Ebenezer must be replaced. The ministry has requested the cost of replacing all the lights and the cable from GEBE. This is being worked on and still pending to be given to us. in regards to the district council's committee of meeting with the committee of Dutch Quart, the Council of Dutch Quart and Cahill, we had a meeting. This was mentioned by the MP. We had a meeting with the district council committee regarding the community of Dutch Quart and Cahill in Parliament. Parliament never sent the reports. Has the minister met with the Dutch Quarter Community Council or the Cahill Community Council? Can the minister elucidate a little on Ebenezer? Is there anything in place or any idea how the minister is going to target the issues there? I met with the Dutch Quarter and Cahill Community Councils separately to address district improvement concerns. These councils were also in attendance recently at a general meeting with all community council and garbage haulers, where cleanliness of the island was discussed along the ways government and the community can work together to minimize the garbage output and littering on our beautiful rock. I look forward to these reports of Parliament being sent, Mr. Chairman. Is there any maintenance plan for Ebenezer? As I mentioned, in collaboration with GB, the ministry has been diligently looking into the enhancement of safety and security within all residential areas on Sint Maarten, with the focus being placed on safety within the districts and the main roads. The plan to enhance the various districts is a work in progress, as capacity of the existing streetlight network has to be expanded in order to meet our needs. The Ministry of Rummy, as of recently, is also busy looking to the implementation of solar streetlights as a solution to solve the issues in certain areas where there is no infrastructure for streetlights. It is the intention of the ministry to have the problem resolved before the end of the year, and we are working hand in hand with GB to deal with this matter. Next question posed by the MP. Acrobats related to natural risk and environment. Did the minister ever met with acrobats following the meeting in Parliament? No, Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of this group, and I have not met with this group. I don't know if a report can also be sent so that we can see if there's anything that can be shared with Parliament on that subject matter. Technical reports on Prince Bernard Bridge. We understand there's a technical report from a long time concluding that the Prince Bernard Bridge cannot hold heavy traffic. Can this report be made available to the Parliament? And is the 500,000 guilders to be available in the budget sufficient to ensure the safety of using the bridge? I would like to know how. The UNESCO IHE mentioned the widening of the bridge span to enable greater flow of water. No research was done in regard to the structural integrity of the bridge and its lifespan. A structural integrity research will be carried out by a competent firm in order to establish this. This discussion has been ongoing in the ministry as well. In October 2021, Parliament passed a unanimous motion referencing the Parliament building. During the tenure, the owners of the building signed a 3-year agreement with Parliament, awaiting the construction of a new Parliament building. The motion resolves to have the new Parliament building where the old government building is. There would have been parking where the post office was and where the current parking lot is now taking place. Will be offices for the high councils. Is it still a vision of Rummy to get this done? Is it the plan to be executed within 3 years contract of the current contract of the Parliament building? Because it will be saving the country millions in rent. As mentioned to LP Westcott Williams, regarding the lots, the temporary parking has been a short-term plan of government, and the other lots are being designated for development of parking, Parliament building, parking, and also government offices. How many of the projects and activities have been completed and or are going were funded through the NRPB Trust Fund? Can a list of all the projects be provided to Parliament and the source of funding for each project? Under the implementation by the NRPB in relation to the Ministry of Rummy, the Emergency Recovery Project Part 1 being done in close collaboration with almost all ministries, including our ministry. The budget for this portfolio is approximately $120 million US. The EDMP project, which is the Emergency Debris Management Project, being done in close collaboration with other ministries, including us. This project is budgeted at $85 million US. The Digital Government Transformation Project is implemented by the Digital Leadership Team and the NRPB in close collaboration with all ministries, including the Ministry of RUMI. This project is budgeted at $12 million US. There are also projects currently under the preparation phase, which is, as I mentioned, the Sint Maarten Housing Project is being prepared by the NRPB in close collaboration with the ministry and SMHDF. For this project, the trust fund has allocated $20 million US, and co-financing options for new social housing units are being considered. The wastewater management project, which is being prepared by the NRPB in close collaboration with our ministry. For this project, the trust fund has allocated $10 million and the $15 million US on the CapEx. As a whole, this project has a budget of approximately $25 million. In the coming weeks, I will be participate in the steering committee meeting in Washington, D.C. to review and discuss these projects more in depth, and I look forward to updating not only Parliament, but the general public as well. How much was actually spent on travel per ministry in 2022? And how much is projected for 2023? I would like each ministry to provide a breakdown of travel and what was yielded from the travel. In regards to the Ministry of RUMI, for 2022, the total travel that was spent was approximately 34,000 guilders. The trips were Aruba, Washington, D.C., Curacao, the Bahamas, and the Netherlands. Aruba was a cultural event as Deputy Prime Minister. Curacao was in relation to the wastewater conference, the International Panel for Deltas and Coastal Areas. The Netherlands was a wastewater treatment plants visit and recruitment job fair for the Ministry of RUMI, and the Bahamas was a high-level forum in the Caribbean Water and Wastewater Association. I would like to know the total budget per cabinet that is allocated for consultants. I want to know how much was spent in 2022 and how much is projected for 2023. There are currently 2 consultants working for the cabinet of RUMI, and the total amount spent in 2022 was 187,000 guilders. I move on to questions posed by MP Bryson. What is the short-term plan for the improvement of the landfill so the operations there, also the long-term plan? There have been various plans, whether it will be doing waste to energy, incineration. Can you give us an update on the situation at the dump? It is no secret that the landfill is currently and has been over its capacity for many years. Improvements in the short term is to move towards separation of waste streams. This is to reduce the amount of trash that ends up on the landfill and hopefully extend the lifespan until it can be fully shut down. The ministry and the NRPB has a formal work group with the objective of reforming solid waste sector on Sint Maarten. Items such as processing of waste streams on the island, preparing waste for reuse or export are the work group's topics, and we believe that this will achieve real results. Next question posed by MP Bryson. Is it the idea to use third parties to support to get permits processed faster? The goal is to have architects. This was in reference to the training that I mentioned. The goal is to get architects and engineers up to par and at the same level of ministry personnel within the ministry. One second, Mr. Chairman. The goal is to get architects and engineers up to par and at the same level as personnel within the ministry, evaluating the permits against the applicable laws and policies. There are some architects that have the knowledge already, and those permits go through the approval process much faster. As mentioned during my presentation, a lot of backlog is created due to the ministry personnel having to write letters to make changes to drawing, along with overall expected increase in quality of submitted work. The number of permits which go through the approval process faster will increase, leading to overall faster turnaround once these trainings take place in May of this year. Various items shifted from operational into CapEx. What measures are in place to ensure that these projects are materialized? All capital expenditure items will be publicly tendered and linked to performance agreements. In-house, the team at Infrastructure Management and New Works is equipped with the necessary knowledge and tools to execute the proper management of these projects. Mr. Chairman, I move on to questions posed by MP Peterson. The tender was done for trenching and was sent to SRB for vetting. What is the current status? The tender for trenching was indeed sent to SRB for vetting. The corresponding report was completed and the ministry received this report in February of 2023, last month. This is the final stage. It is in the final stage of approval and the contract should go into effect by mid-April of this year. What is the status of district cleaning and how is the service being handled? Under what service agreements are cleaners being paid? The works for the last few weeks were in connection with the temporary cleaning assignments pending the awarding of the contracts. And similar to the tender for trenches, the district cleaning tender was also supported by SRB. The ministry received the report February of 2023 and is also in the final stages of approval, and these contracts will also go into effect by mid-April of this year. What plans are in place to revamp the parking in Phillipsburg based on the new parking area introduced by the post office property? Are there plans going forward being addressed interministerially? Based on traffic studies in the past, the design for the ring road is determined that the parking capacity needed for Phillipsburg is approximately 1,200 parking spaces. With the growth of businesses in Phillipsburg over the years, the needed capacity of parking would increase by 25%, bringing the parking capacity to approximately 1,500 parking spaces. In order for the Ministry of Rummy to structurally solve the parking problem in Phillipsburg, parking garages would have to be erected at least 4 parking garages with the capacity of 500 to 600 each, totaling 2,000 or 2,400 parking spaces in Phillipsburg, and this is seen as a long-term plan within the ministry. These plans have also been discussed interministerially with the Ministry of TIAT in particular and also Finance. My question to the minister in regards to how this selection was done for additional legal advice and looking at the total amount that will be paid on the budget post throughout the year is a tender not advisable, especially given the fact that we have assigned Lands Advocate on government's payroll. I am not sure what additional legal advice the MP is referring to, and I look forward to any clarification on that point so that I can respond accordingly. I move on to questions posed by MP De Weaver. The minister pointed out in the presentation that no proper planning was done for the cemetery and we have limited room, but it doesn't explain why I see a decrease in the begraafplaatsen under code 91001 of 273,000 guilders, and it was 350,000 guilders in 2022. I would like to refer to questions 1 to 4 to my opening statement that the budget cuts are based on a review of previous actual spendings across the board. The Department of New Projects, ongoing for 2023 projects, what do you mean by elderly pathway and for elderly/disabled pathway at Great Bay Beach? Where is this going to be constructed on Great Bay? We currently have a boardwalk, so where will the elderly pathway come? Where is the investment amount? What is the investment amount? The ministry is currently working on upgrading the living standard and conditions for our elderly and disabled persons. As such, we have embarked on building a pathway that will grant our elderly and disabled citizens and our visitors as well easy access to Great Bay Beach. The aforementioned will be realized by creating a concrete/wooden path near the breakwater on the eastern side of Great Bay to protect the erosion of the beach. The ministry will ensure that the construction is done in a very environmentally friendly manner which we also already seek advice from the Nature Foundation and working in close collaboration with them and also the White and Yellow Cross. On the staff bureau, the vacancy toelage, there's a decrease of 347,000 guilders. Please explain why this decrease is only for staff bureau but increases elsewhere for other departments. Why is the amount larger than the changes noted in the other departments in the opposite direction? In 2022, it was paid out and therefore taken up in the 2022 budget amendment. At the same time of preparation, we only had information per ministry available. It was decided to put it as a total line on the staff bureau of each ministry. In 2023, it is now taken up per department as intended. This is why the increase will be seen as in each department and a decrease in staff bureau in the 2023 budget. On the semi-private and NGO subsidy and installinger, SMHGF, please explain why there's no subsidy for 2023 for SMHGF. There was $300K in 2021 and zero in 2023. There was a reclassification of the accounts as the transfer to SMHGF is not a subsidy but viewed as a contribution. This change in the budget account conflict to reflect the correct label of these funds. The funds for SMHGF 2023 can be found under budget post 44201. The account 44201 subsidy bijdrage, there's a balance of 729,000 guilders for 2023, but zero in 2022. As I've just mentioned, you can review, or this is based on the previous answer given. On account 43438, onderhoud en reparaties, decrease of 1 million guilders, yet the minister noted the sewage investment presentation in the CapEx. Please explain how the maintenance decreases is it based on policy-based budgeting? I would like to refer to my opening statements as I mentioned in regards to the budget cuts. In regards to your questions on the amount of allocated CapEx for the roads, approximately 5.7 million guilders has been placed for the resurfacing of main roads. 4.6 million guilders has been placed for the hard surfacing of dirt roads with concrete. The said funds will be allocated for the intended purpose, including supervision, quality control, project management, and designing aspects relating to road works where applicable. This too is to help ensure that contractors are held accountable for the delivery of high quality service and product. For the 27 million guilders for the expansion of the sewage network, co-financing with the trust fund, 10 million comes from the NRPB, 15 million from the Kapitaaldienstlening. Does that mean the remaining 2 million in the CapEx is from VRUMI? I'm trying to understand how government is reflecting the difference between NRPB, Kapitaaldienstlening, which is maybe the Netherlands, and the 2 million from the actual Sint Maarten government. I would just like some clarity. As is mentioned, as a whole, the project is budgeted at 25 million USD. This is allocated from the trust fund, 10 million, and 15 million from the Netherlands. It's reflected 27 million guilders in our CapEx. Mr. Chairman, I move on to questions posed by MP Biljani. Months have passed by since the areas in the districts have been cleaned up from debris, glass shrubs being cut down. It's not being done in various areas. Can you say what is going on and why the contracts are not being carried out? This statement is totally not accurate. During the period of no contract, temporary works took place and took care of the cutting of the grass and the roadsides. Once a new contract takes effect in mid-April of this year, all public areas which fall under the contracts will be serviced as usual. I move on to road repair plans. Is there a strategy plan and can it be shared with Parliament? The list of roads which have been identified needing overdue repairs will be shared with Parliament. The plan is to tackle both main roads and secondary roads. Dirt or unsurfaced roads will also be upgraded with the aid of the CapEx budget once it's approved. Can a list of the hard surfacing roads or dirt roads be shared with Parliament? Please refer to my previous answer, and yes, it can be shared and will be shared. Mr. Chairman, that concludes on my end the questions posed and answers given. I look forward to any clarification that members of Parliament might have. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers to the questions that were previously posed in this Central Committee meeting. Members of Parliament, I would ask the next speakers if you have clarifications and or questions, just feel free to pose. I already have now MP Westcott Williams first, but just to note that it's not about a distinction between clarification or questions. You can feel free to pose all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, MP Westcott Williams, just so you know, I'm trying to get the exact details regarding the acrobatics report. Apparently it was sent, but I'm going to get the exact date at which it was sent so that the minister can verify, because that was actually sent to the government. I'll have the details of that shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good evening to the Minister. Thanks to the Minister for his responses. Minister, by now, I hope we have reached at least an understanding with respect to this nature policy plan. And the nature policy plan that was sent back in September, however, that plan requires the approval of Parliament. And in a previous meeting, when I asked you, you had indicated, no, it does not, but it does. It requires the approval. That's the nature policy plan. What we received in September as well, along with the nature policy plan, for information's sake, actually, we received it, was also the nature plan. And the nature plan, and Minister, I want you to know that I sanction the way that this particular subject has been built on. What do I mean with this? We have several laws regarding our nature, several laws about nature management, preservation, etc., etc. Then we get a nature policy plan. So that's the policy. That one needs to be approved by Parliament, as I mentioned. And then you have a nature plan. So it's specific activities to be carried out. The policy plan needs to be approved by Parliament, and the nature plan needs to be reported on to Parliament. And in the case of the nature plan, that reporting needs to happen before the 1st of June of the following year. So the minister reports yearly by June 1st. So Minister, in that particular case, acknowledging the existence of the nature policy plan and the nature plan, and these go back to 2021, my question is, has there been a nature commission installed? 1. 2, in the nature plan, there are several objectives with budgets. Are there any objectives of the nature plan that I can find back in the budget currently under discussion? So my questions are whether there's a nature commission in accordance with the law, and whether there are any specific objectives and measures, if you wish, based on the nature plan that I can find in the budget now under discussion. The Minister, I continue, and I understand your introduction, and in which you stated, in other words, well, you can't give out a guilder twice, and if you have a budget of 100,000 guilders, there's no way that you can give out 150,000 or even 110,000. But Minister, when I understand there is no, although in the budget it is stated, meerjarig contracten in the case of the, I believe it was for the district maintenance, there is no multi-annual contract, but the ministry is working on it. But when we have, for example, the garbage collection minister, and I assume that there are contracts with amounts that the government has to comply with if the vendor, in other words, the contractor, is complying with his or her end of the bargain. So I can't understand that where you do have contractual agreements that you can slash the budget and say we will see how the budget will develop to have the correct amount of these contracts reflected in the budget. So where the garbage collection is concerned, that has been reduced to 6.7 million guilders. Can this amount pay for the contracts currently existing for garbage collection is my question. I understand how the management of the sewage plant has been cut because the work has been cut and thus the budget has been cut. So I would like to know, given the reference to the operational department of ROMI for example, the cemeteries and also partially for the sewage plant, what is the operational department, not what is, how is it staffed? How is the operational department of the Ministry of ROMI staff? How many persons do you have, workmen, do you have in your operational department that you can put in, for example, into the cemeteries, into assisting at the sewage plant, etc.? Mr. Chairman, the minister did not respond to my question regarding the grid market report which has been announced recently in the media. And specifically my question was, explain the grid market report, provided if possible, and its relation to St. Maarten Energy Plan. And then I would just like to know, the minister confirmed that there are discussions ongoing with the family of the location on the Colby Hill and where the flag is, and I would like to know what is the scope of these discussions. For how long did we have an agreement? One, are we now discussing extending the agreement? Is there any part of beautification that is part of these discussions? Mr. Chairman, those are the only questions I have for the minister. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. Before continuing on to the next speaker, I just want to indicate to the Parliament as well as the Honourable Minister a letter of July 4th, 2022. You should have received a document from the Committee of VROMI related to what was asked earlier about acrobatics BV. There was various documents attached. If the Minister can please maybe check back within your archives to see if you indeed have it. And there's also a pending meeting in that regard as well from the VROMI Committee. Next, we have MP Angelique Rumeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A pleasant good afternoon good evening to you, to the Honorable Minister, his staff, my colleagues in the viewing and listening public. I have but one clarification question, because as the Minister answered through you, Mr. Chair, concerning the community councils, I believe I heard him mention the Community Council of Cahill as well as the Dutch Quarter Community Council, but I would like to make known that the Cahill Community Council was never in Parliament. So I believe it's either a mistake on behalf of the MP that posed the question, or it may have been a matter of, you know, the way it was asked, but the Cahill Community Council was never in Parliament. The two councils that were here were the KB and the Dutch Quarter Community Council.
Thank you, MP Angelique Rumeau. Next, MP Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions for the Minister of ROMI, so I'm going to get right into the questions as we speak. Through you, and good evening to you, Honorable Chair, good evening to the Honorable Minister, his support staff, my honorable colleagues, and everyone who's watching and viewing by whichever means. Good evening to everyone. Through you, Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Minister in his presentation made mention of the Foga property to be developed for housing. I would like to ask the Honorable Minister through you, Mr. Chairman, what is the entire square meter or size of land in the Foga area, and how much of this land is to be developed? I would also like to know what is the total cost of the development for the housing project in Foga, and is there a project that is initiated from the Ministry of Romy concerning the property in Foga? I would also like to know, Mr. Chairman, through you, is this also the same area that the World Bank and the NRPP is looking at for resettlement of persons moving from the landfill? So with that being said, if the answer to that is yes, then how will this be divided, seeing that the ministry has a housing project and also a resettlement program should be done via the World Bank and NRPB, if the answer to that is yes? Mr. Chairman, how many court cases at present is the Ministry of Romy involved in at the moment? I mean, that's two things at present at the moment, nonetheless. In terms of cost, how much has the ministry spent on court cases relating to the ministry? What is the status of the DQ project in terms of completion? What's the status of the court case that was held in the Netherlands with Van Boekhout? What's the name of it? Boekel? Sorry, Van Boekel. Was the ministry or the government represented in this court case that was held in the Netherlands with said company? And also, why is this project in court in the Netherlands? I would also like to know, Mr. Chairman, through you, what is the overall cost for the completion of the project that was to be completed in Dutch Quarter by said company? Has the company Van Boekel received payments based on the bid won for the project? If yes, how much? Can the minister give a detailed breakdown of the works that was to be done by the company Van Boekel? Can the minister as well explain what was done during the time the company started work in the Dutch Quarter area? Has the government, in particular, the Vromy Ministry, assigned the landfill land that has been cornered off by the World Bank for resettlement? Was it given to the World Bank or the NRPB? If yes, how much of the land is assigned and when was it done? Also, what legal basis is used by the World Bank to pay individuals for government land for their removal or resettlement elsewhere? Moving on, has a final report been completed regarding the situation at GEBE? If yes, can this report be given to Parliament? Can an update be given on the status of GEBE in relations to the spyware attack? What's the status of the suspended managers, Mrs. Daniel and Temert, currently in relations to GEBE and their position? Are they still being paid? Are they on administrative leave? What's the current status of both individuals? When it comes to the repairs of Belvedere housing, where did the funding came from and what was done and what was the role of the ministry? Can the minister show in the budget how much was allocated for the repairs of Belvedere housing project, if any? And Mr. Chairman, I will leave it right here for now. Those are my questions. I thank you very much.
And those questions, MP, can be sent in writing, or you want them? No. Okay, just checking. Members of Parliament, I do not see any others requesting further questions or clarification. I do have one clarification for the Minister. Minister, I did understand your response to my question regarding the need for third-party support in terms, or actually the registration of architects. My question was more along the lines of, would the ministry be open or consider getting some sort of outside help, so assistance within the ministry, if you have some staffing issues or you have backlog, to be able to actually assist with the actual work being done. For example, you mentioned part of the process can be the back and forth, between permit holders and them needing to be changes if you need additional personnel or additional help to get that done. That's really the nature of my question. And also, regarding the question that was posed about parking in Phillipsburg, I did understand the overall long-term plan. However, in the shorter term, so within 1 year, is the government still committed to having a multi-level parking lot actually in Phillipsburg, adjoining to the land that was reserved for the Parliament building, as Parliament will also require parking? And while that project is underway, it would make sense to maybe start with the parking lot first, as that has a use of not just, or let me not say first, but simultaneously, so that that parking can also be used not just for the Parliament, but also for others that are visiting Phillipsburg, considering the urgent need for parking. Minister, you've received various questions and clarifications from the members of Parliament. I will... Minister, I will allow the next minister who has answers to the questions ready, which would be the Minister of TIAT, to join us, which will allow you time to gather the answers to your question. And after the Minister of TIAT has concluded, I would ask you to return. Members of Parliament, I will adjourn for 5 minutes to allow the Minister of TIAT to join us. Meeting adjourned until 7:35. Yep. Good evening once again, members of Parliament and the viewing public. We currently have with us the Minister of TIAT, who will answer the questions that were posed earlier in this Central Committee meeting. Minister, you have the floor.
Good evening, MPs. Good evening, listening public. Good evening, Griffier. Good evening, Chair. First, the questions from Ms. Sarah Westcott-Williams, MP Sarah Westcott-Williams. The many plans to deal with the Phillipsburg, but the budget has been cut by 50%. Please provide an update on the marketplace. How does the minister plan to go about these improvements? Royal Caribbean Group made a commitment over $600,000. Is there an agreement or commitment? Is the amount of the vendors village going to be used for the marketplace from the government capital budget? As mentioned prior to the improvements, the funding of the improvements are to come from the capital expenditure, from which the amount budgeted for the vendors village. As the MP requested the information on what the vendors village is, it was a plan for the ministry to house the Pondfield vendors food trucks that are on the Phillipsburg area. However, the ministry is awaiting allocation of land and able to proceed with such a project, which is currently on hold because of the land situation. And we do have plans to redirect the funds for the marketplace to be completed. Royal Caribbean Group will finance partially, was question. Royal Caribbean Group has pledged $350,000 to the revitalization of the marketplace and the Phillipsburg area. Question 2 was the lottery oversight NAF 200,000. What is the oversight rather than stemming the growth we oversee? Please explain. In 2022, the ministry formalized the oversight of the lottery draws. This includes the Lottery Oversight Committee, which has existed for the last 4 decades, without being formalized. As part of the formalization, the following was regulated. The committee members have been formally appointed. The stipends have been formally regulated. Payments of the stipends to the committee members are now made from the government of Sint Maarten to remove any possibility with integrity breaches resulting from the lottery companies paying the committee members directly, as was the case prior to the formalization. The lottery companies' license holders do pay a fee. They pay 40 guilders per person per draw on weekdays, 60 on weekends and holidays, apart from the license fees and oversight services. The formalization of the lottery oversight has actually resulted in a small revenue stream of just over 100,000 guilders for government. However, a budget needed to be created to pay out the stipends to the committee members. This is what is reflected in the budget of the Ministry of TIAT. The pilot census, what has the ministry learned? The pilot data is typically collected as part of a small-scale test and is not intended to be representative of the population or to provide statistically significant results. The purpose of the pilot data is to test the effectiveness of the census methods, procedures, and tools to identify potential issues that may need to be addressed before conducting the actual full-scale census. The department received permission to share some of the pilot data in the past to show the public that only aggregated data is generated, not personal information, and not to encourage them to participate. The census is expected to be completed this year, as mentioned, and then the analysis will be shared. Stat research has been cut by 1 million guilders of the country package mentioned. A peer review was done. What are the results? There is an extensive table of all of the details, and I would like to send these in writing if the MP agrees. I would send those, and it will have all of that information in it. It's quite long. I will send that in writing if it's okay. December 2022, government published an investment policy and diversification policy, which specific objectives of the policy are reflected in the budget 2023. The investment promotion budget will be provided to the EDC in the form of a subsidy to carry out promotional activities using the policy as a guide. The investment website, which requires some updating, and will be handed over to the EDC to manage. The red carpet policy, as mentioned in the presentation, is to expedite the processes for high-level investors, specifically in the diversification sectors. Completing the EDC structure, what is planned are left to be done. The EDC board is awaiting the shareholders to approval, which will take place in a subsequent COM meeting. The SME Policy 2021, specific objectives being reflected in 2023. One, the one-year SEDP program, which is hand-holding, training, and development program for MSMEs, started last year and will continue this year. The budget for this year has also been earmarked for this program. As our budget is limited, and like all ministries, budget cuts were inevitable, we have also met with various stakeholders and will be providing platforms for micro enterprises to showcase their products via street fairs throughout Phillipsburg at different times during the year. Policy on agriculture, livestock, fisheries, 2022, budget 175,000. What of the policies will be executed with a small budget cut compared to 2022? Support of the farmers market at the Port of Plaisance will continue through 2023. The establishment of the pop-up monthly farmers market in Phillipsburg will be starting in May to November. Education through workshops, webinars by regional experts to existing farmers scheduled for end of Q2, beginning Q3. We are also in discussions to bring a program to Sint Maarten focused on converting hobby farmers into commercial farmers. As we are still in discussion, it is not sure if this will materialize in 2023. The status on the Gaming Control Board and its budget of 2023. The country package measures the H2 regarding reform on the gaming and gambling sector is on target. A request for proposal is pending. Decision-making for the writing of a business plan for Sint Maarten Gaming Authority. A legislative lawyer has been contracted and paid for by the TWO to assist the Sint Maarten Gaming Authority Working Group in drafting the national ordinance, regulations, and national decrees, as well as to make amendments to the related ordinances. The budget of 175,000 is primarily allocated to hiring of local expert to support the working group. Why has the book fair subsidy been scrapped? The book fair subsidy has been zeroed due to the fact a follow-up was to be held with the book fair committee and departure of culture to discuss the way to move forward with the annual subsidy. An urgent meeting was held in February 2020 with the Sint Maarten Tourist Bureau, the Department of Culture, and the book fair committee to discuss the collaboration amongst the three parties and method of submission of proposals and requests for the subsidy annually. According to the subsidy ordinance, as this was a challenge, the pandemic hit, and the book fair committee was informed that all subsidies were put on hold due to the pandemic. The book fair held in 2020 and 2021 online and requested assistance with promoting digitally, which was carried out by the Sint Maarten Tourist Office and its firms. Carnival. Does this mean the plan to put Carnival on bid, or will subsidy go to the SCDF? Carnival has been placed on the budget and is currently underway using the same foundation, so there are no plans to put the subsidy on bid for 2023. What exactly is the vendors village and marketplace and taxi stand? Money in the budget for the vendors village ministry will be fixing. Okay, can we also do the taxi stand for the same capital expenditure budgeted? Yes, the taxi holding area / parking is incorporated into the new marketplace design concept with 12 holding spaces that will assist to not have congestion as we do now in front of the courthouse, Clem-Lebega Square. The idea is that the total project will be funded by the 630,000 that the Royal Caribbean Group has pledged, and the remainder from the capital expenditure budget for the vendors village will be used to assist to back it up and to cover that cost. As mentioned earlier, this is part of a plan that will be incorporated by means of a note of amendment to better elucidate the plan in the explanatory notes of the budget. Request for the increase in bus tariff. Does this mean the ministry has a position? Does the ministry have a position? What is the status of the tariff? The request was already in motion when I came in as a minister. It has already been sent to the governor for approval, but it was returned to make adjustments. Yes, a decision was taken at the time to make the adjustments, and the draft amendment national decree was returned to the Council of Advice roughly 2 weeks ago. The NADA report has been finalized, and we are waiting the final vetting by Legal Affairs prior to sending it back to the governor's office for the approval. Are there any plans for the Simsbury Lagoon in addition to the mooring plan? This is intended as a future policy plan for government, the details of which are still being worked out within the ministry. Some ideas that are being considered further than the mooring plan are to introduce anchoring fees in our waters. Environmental and other fees are also being researched to see what and how we can implement. Moving on to the question of MP Melissa Gums. Do you not believe that the resources should be put into complete revamp of the public transportation system with collaboration with the Friends side, given that the building of a terminal might not be used as intended? In my first 2 weeks in office, I did meet with the Bus Association. I also understood this was requested from them to the previous ministers. The terminal will be used, as is on the Friends side of the island. They were extremely happy and excited about the ministry's plans actually about the bus terminal, so we don't anticipate any real issues. The SARE report referenced the lottery booths. Have you read the report and taken note of the issues that they highlighted regarding discrepancies and legislation and policy related to the gambling industry, in particular lotteries? What is the ministry's view of the report and the amendment of Article 4, Paragraph 3 of the Lottery Ordinance? The ministry has not received a copy of the report, but as mentioned, the regulation of the lottery booths is a high priority of the Ministry of TIAT. We have finalized the draft national decree to regulate, amongst others, the fees for the lottery booths, a required permit for license holders for each lottery booth, and in the revised moratorium list, which should be approved within short, a halt on any new sales points has been included. Who sits on the Lottery Oversight Committee, and how are the persons on this committee chosen and compensated? The decree with the list of persons serving on the committee will be provided to Parliament. However, it's important to mention that most of the committee members were already functioning on the committee informally and thus were formally appointed. 2 additional persons were recently added following resignations. The following criteria was recently approved for the appointments of the committee: minimum age requirement 25 years of age, a clean certificate of good conduct, proficient command of the English language, sufficient command of the Dutch language, must be in possession of own transportation. Compensation is as follows, which was mentioned, I think, earlier also. The 20 per draw during the week, and now 40 per draw on weekends and holidays per committee member, with the exception of the chair of the committee, who receives 25 and 45 respectively. On to the questions of Ms. MP Ludmila Duncan. The noise pollution is a challenge, and we do have a problem. Would like to know what are we doing to reduce the noise and budget implications. As mentioned, the ministry is presently updating the residential economic policy, which is currently used as a guideline to issue permissions for music to bars, restaurants, etc. The decibel levels will be updated, as well as the restrictions on what will be allowed for the various types of establishment. Example, requests for an open-air establishment will be evaluated stricter than an enclosed establishment where the sound can be more mitigated. If our inspectors are receiving the tools needed to execute. For 2023, yes, the most important tool needed right now for the department is the vehicles in order to carry out their work, as well as adequate on-the-job training, which is carried out to their supervisory and investigative tasks. The ministry is and has made available additional training to assist the staff in making use of the tablets as part of the workforce mobilization and survey software to document the work being done in the field in real time. This reduces the administrative burden on the staff and improves the staff productivity. How are the estimations calculated for the rental tax? The reply to this question has been requested from the Minister of Finance, and if not already answered, I will follow up with him to ensure that it is answered. The improvement and the clarity timeline for 2023 needed for the Phillipsburg improvements, marketplace and bus terminal. Once budget is approved, including the amendment elucidations, we can move forward with the permits and approvals as needed. It is then to advise the vendors at the market that they will be temporarily housed across the street in the parking area. The complete project estimated is about 140 days for the marketplace. The bus terminal was presented in the budget under the category Other as a plan for the future. And although no money is in the budget, it was to highlight what the budget cuts can cause, as this is something very much needed for a long time and will be beneficial to all. We will work with the stakeholders, possible investors, and push our other projects to start revenue generations, which can hopefully start to be put towards great projects like this one. Moving on to the questions of MP Christopher Emmanuel for finance related to TIAT. Reference to the 5 million guilders from the Airbnb. Is the law ready? Do we have an Airbnb law that we can attach to these figures given? The Minister of Finance already answered these questions. Again, if he has not answered them, I will follow up with him to ensure that he sends that response. The same for question 2. This is more of a finance question and VSA because he was the one that initially initiated this tax from the VSA side. Questions 3 and 4, is the proposed tax already drafted to be collected? If collected, this is illegal and can it be back taxed? Same as the above, this will have to be answered by the Minister of Finance. How do we intend to collect this tax? Also, this has to be answered by the Minister of Finance. Where in the budget in the Ministry of TIAT helping of funding these gardens, and how much will it cost? The agricultural subsidy, budget post 8270 44301 8008, was used to support the agricultural project in schools. MP Akeem Arundel, no questions. MP Angelique Rameau. With the global inflation rate ranging on an average 7 to 8%, our local inflation rate at 3.8 seems a bit low and doesn't feel like it reflects the reality of prices over the last 2 years. Can you explain the inflation rate and calculation thereof in more detail? The data collectors collect prices for a list of various items every month. These item prices come from 12 expenditure categories and are all weighted. The 12 categories are as follows with the allocated weight. Food and non-alcoholic beverages, 7.2%. Alcoholic beverages, tobacco and narcotics, 0.4%. Clothing and footwear, 4.8%. Housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels, 36.1%. Furnishings, household equipment, and routine household maintenance, 6.5%. Health, 1.9%. Transport, 14.6%. Communication, 6%. Recreation and culture, 4.6%. Education, 2.6%. Restaurant and hotels, 2%. Miscellaneous goods and services, 13.4%. Within each of these expenditure categories, the price changes are calculated per subcategory. The weights of the expenditure categories are calculated as the proportion of total consumption of the expenditure of all goods and services, including the index basket and the reference period. The reference period in this case is based on the 2015 Household Budget Survey. Based on the household budget surveys in the US versus Sint Maarten, we see that when it comes to food, consumers spend 7.2% of their expenditure on this in Sint Maarten, compared to in the US 14%. Also housing, water, electricity, fuel, and gas weighs more in Sint Maarten at 36.1 than in the US at 32.3. In June 2022, the Minister of TIAT instituted an excise tax relief which halted the further increase of fuel prices, which also influenced electricity cost, further capping the inflation rate where the expenditure categories weight is very high for the total spending on Sint Maarten. Can you provide details on the government's plan to improve the island's tourism industry, including market campaigns and infrastructure upgrades? Together with the Sint Maarten Tourist Bureau, marketing budget cuts and liquidity issues we are confronted with challenges such as inconsistent marketing actions due to late payments, which in turn has the consequences of losing market share due to not being present consistently in the consumer market and in the trade industry sector amongst travel agents and tour operators. The following actions will take place for 2023 to increase the tourism receipt, heads and beds, the co-op campaigns of airlines with airlines and tour operators, trade shows and attendance, hosting of travel agents, tour operators, journalists, and influencers, to promote the annual calendar of events, continue expanding our website, including travel agent specialists, programs, sign up for newsletters and updated news, various campaigns created to increase bookings and arrivals, for example, Expedia and TripAdvisor, the launch and rebranding by May, latest June, launch online of the ED card system, which requires cooperation with the Sint Maarten Airport and Justice/Immigration, the tourism exit surveys for 2023, coordination for beautifying Phillipsburg, including signage, increasing the foot traffic in Phillipsburg via the bus terminal, finalization of the digital maps, collaboration and partnership with our port and cruise industry, collaboration with our yachting industry. Question 3 was, what are the plans, the 2023 plans for revamping of the official Sint Maarten social media presence? As Instagram was mentioned in the presentation, a quick scan was done. In comparison to our comparable sister islands in the Dutch Caribbean, Aruba with 242,000 followers, Curacao with 86,000 followers, Bonaire with 35,400 followers. Then we have our official Sint Maarten Instagram page, Vacation Sint Maarten, has a following of 13.6 followers, or 13,600 followers. What plans does the ministry have to boost our social media presence, particularly through the digital avenues we have direct control over? The Tourist Office has a comprehensive plan for boosting the destination's social media presence through their official Vacation Sint Maarten Instagram and Facebook pages, as well as other marketing strategies to which social media is complementary to, such as public-private partnerships, word of mouth, public relations, and of course the cooperative marketing campaigns with the airlines. Our marketing approach incorporates a variety of channels and tactics. So indeed, the tourism plans for 2023 is to continue boosting the Vacation Sint Maarten Facebook page and Instagram page using the destination attributes, highlighting culture, history, adventure, culinary, and other activities, as well as focusing on our partnerships with the trade industry to increase bookings. Why is this super relevant for the country? The latest figures show that there are expected to be 4.89 billion social media users worldwide in 2023, a 6.5% increase from a year ago. It is also 2.2 billion more than the number of social media users in 2017, which represents a whopping 79.1% jump in just 5 years. Social media presence by a destination builds awareness and provides inspiration. It also assists with travel planning, eases of booking processes, sharing experience, entices people to visit the destination. It is relevant for our destination, but again, ultimately, a success in the travel industry requires a comprehensive marketing approach that incorporates a variety of channels and tactics, not just a large following on social media. Is there a budget allocated for the collaboration with the local content creators and marketing companies as a tool to further market the island? It has been said many times that we lack the promotion of our cultural products, and tourists sometimes miss the authentic cultural experiences. Promotion of our cultural product can only come from our locals. Therefore, I would like to know if the budget has been allocated and how much. Due to the budget cuts, a separate local content creator budget is not allocated to execute such projects. But we have shifted strategies somewhat and have a small budget for one local content creator, and together with the internal staff members will coordinate and assist the digital marketing firm in establishing various highlights, campaigns, and postings in the cultural history to be used for our social media pages. The tourism department has no budget specifically allocated for cultural experiences, as the budget is very limited. We use cultural and history throughout our social media marketing. The only event that has become an annual subsidy is the Art Saves Lives, which brings international artists and participants and their families to experience the destination through this event, and while on island, explore and experience our destination. Question 6, as it relates to the telecommunications portfolio, with the presence of Starlink broadband internet system now on the island, does this have the ministry's attention, especially as it pertains to the enormous effect this can or will have on the livelihood of our local telecommunications operators on the island, who will be affected? If yes, what is the ministry currently doing as it relates to the policy? Additionally, can you confirm that this has the attention of our local regulators, BTP? Regarding the telecommunications port file, the ministry is aware of the request to have the presence here by Starlink broadband internet systems. BTP has brought this to the attention of the minister, including through official technical advice and during introductory meeting held on February 13th of this year. The ministry is considering the potential impact on the local telecommunication operators prior to making any decision. The BDO in the last meeting was also preparing information and advice on this, which I'm awaiting. What measures is the government taking to encourage private investment in Sint Maarten and create more job opportunities for the people of the island? Can the minister elucidate the red carpet policy for the investors mentioned in his presentation? I applaud this initiative, as foreign investment is a tool we can use to bolster our economy. However, I'm also keen to know if this policy is being developed on an interministerial level, particularly as it relates to the protection of our local workforce and opportunities for local human capital enhancement through the training and on-job learning by foreign expertise imported. In essence, how can our local workforce, entrepreneurs gain from the foreign investments and ensure we think of this on a broad scale, but also direct impact? There were different projects in the pipeline that will provide jobs for the people. An example of this was the JW Marriott, formerly the Westin Hotel, which will provide job opportunities. The red carpet policy, as mentioned in the presentation, is an interministerial policy spearheaded by the Ministry of TIAT, but including the Ministry of VSA and Justice. The purpose of this policy is to expedite processes for high-level investors, specifically in the diversification sectors, but also to put the necessary requirements in place for qualifying investors. The intention is not to circumvent any existing laws, so the labor laws will still continue to apply. Can you provide an update on the progress of government's plans to establish a functioning public transportation system on the island? Update on the progress of the PT system of the public transportation system on the island. I've had numerous meetings with the stakeholders and received a very extensive plan from the Department of Inspections at TIAT. Ms. Van Heinigen, who is the one working on it, has presented her thesis and what was based on her findings. It is the initial plan to start some sort of regulation or assurance of all routes for the population of Sint Maarten, and lays with the plan for the bus terminal, where all buses will be mandated to begin their journey from. This terminal will have a dispatcher or similar to execute this plan and advise to each bus prior to heading out where they are heading to. Basically, every time a bus leaves, it will have a different route assigned to them, ensuring that all routes are covered and a regular flow is in place. Moving on to the questions of MP Chanel Brownbill. Is the maintenance cost been factored into the budget? Indeed, maintenance is lacking. This is for the marketplace. Indeed, the maintenance is lacking at the marketplace as in present for quite some time now. With my overall approach to the project, with phase 1 being the market area and also the benches and garbage bins, it is the intention that the funds derived from the marketing campaign we will introduce on the bins, that it go towards the general upkeep of the bins, the benches, and the marketplace. The market area, once complete, will be in much better condition and require very minimal maintenance. Moving on to the questions of MP Grisha Heiliger. Martin, the GB tariff relief for seniors owning or renting above 60 and above. No response was received. Can you respond regarding the status? The initiative was initially done by Minister of Romy, Mr. Maurice Lake, but we reached out to the company and understood that because of the cyber attack, this was suspended and the relief program is currently on hold. How far is the minister with the country packages, SDGs, and were reflected to the budget? Country packages measure E6 regarding improving the business and investment climate is on schedule. At present, there is no designated budget post. However, the plan of approach only indicates funding from the Netherlands. If additional funds are required, specifically for the long-term projects related to the development of the legislation, then this will be taken from a relevant budget post. Country package measures H2 regarding reform of the gaming and gambling sector is also on target. The budget of the Gaming Authority/Gaming Board of 175,000 is allocated to support the needs of this measure alongside financial and technical assistance from the Netherlands. Question 3, how are policies linked to the expenditure and where is it reflected in the budget? Reflected in our budget, there are overarching goals that govern the activities, projects, and expenditures by the ministry. Excuse me. These goals include economic growth, economic relief, service improvement, tourism development, and controls and enforcement, which are reflected in the budget policy as well as specific categories where were listed in the presentation. How many projects do we have under the NRPB? Sorry. The Meteorological Department of Sint Maarten has 2 projects under the NRPB. The Network Automatic Weather Station. The NRPB consultant is presently working with the MDS on this project. The site, a private government-owned, have been finalized and the MDS has issued letters to the private owners for permission to install the equipment on their premises. However, most of the sites, as mentioned, are government-owned and Romy would require to give the necessary permissions. Question 2, the second project is the new MDS SMCAA building. The drawings are completed for this building. The land for the location of the building needs to be transferred still from the PGAIA to the government of Sint Maarten. How much was spent on court cases and the results in 2022-2023? The total amount of court cases in 2022 is 23,409 guilders. The total amount of court cases in 2023 is 4,640 guilders. How much was spent on travel and the justification and results per travel? The total amount spent on travel in the year 2022 was 400,286, and the total budgeted for the year 2023 is 401,537. Typically, the Ministry of TIAT is the most active ministry in terms of travel due to works related in the tourism, aviation, and telecommunication sectors that require physical attendance. How many consultants are in each cabinet and how much is spent on consultants in the cabinet in 2022 and 2023? The amount the cabinet spent on consultancy in the year 2022 is 380,472. The third-party consultant, 128.25. This came from the personnel budget account 43000. The third-party consultant outsourced VAC specialist cabinet was at 197,247, coming from the same account, also in 2022. The third-party legal was 55,200. Legal and other expert advice came from the budget 43476. In 2023, the cabinet has a budget. The cabinet minister budget is total 140,304 for third-party consultancy. Partial of the NAF 115,250 goes to a legal consultancy, and the remainder goes to court cases. Question from MP Rolanda Bryson. Is the ministry looking into other source of fuel for the country, given Seoul has a monopoly position? The ministry, in the revised moratorium list, is also proposing to allow for gas stations for low-cost fuel alternatives. This will assist us in attracting other importers of petroleum products, particularly operators from within the region. In discussions with the cruise lines, we are also looking into cleaner fuels, which will decrease their carbon footprint and plug-in possibilities here in Sint Maarten. Discussions on possibilities for these options are in progress. During my last visit to Curaçao, I also spoke with the minister on that end about the cur oil topic and to see what is possible. As the minister mentioned, we can also, as the MP mentioned, sorry, we can also look at other suggested suppliers and see how we can find alternatives. Can the minister elucidate more on the income from maritime? Are we going to get a professional agency to attract vessels to Sint Maarten? Currently, the Maritime Affairs have small registry with local vessels and small commercial vessels, only up to 499 gross tons. International registration at present allows vessels 24 meters or yachts up to the same 499 tons. Cargo vessels, we can also do up to 499 tons. Our international meaning means only though within the Caribbean trade area, so not to the US mainland, not to the European mainland. A study was already conducted to increase the size of the vessels in the registry. However, the capacity of the department will have to increase to accommodate this. The flag that will be used will be the Dutch flag. This is definitely a huge potential source of income for the country, as Sint Maarten is in a strategic geographical position and will make it very attractive for vessels to come in and register. There are currently no plans who will be used. However, we plan to put on an RFP within soon so we can see locally and internationally who can provide these solutions. Would like an elucidation from all ministries what have been busy to increase the agent leaders fees. The overview will be sent in writing, but to name a few, the restructuring of business license fees, introduction of license fees for public transportation license, and the introduction of animal import fees. Moving on to MP Rayon Peterson, position of the legalization of cannabis from the TIAT perspective. The ministry, well, the Minister of TIAT has no objection to the cannabis legalization and the benefits, not just on the tourism side, but also a health aspect for our local population. It can provide a more natural relief to those who depend heavily on generic medicines. Minister plans to sit with Justice and VSA to see how we can proceed further and first get rid of the law against the cannabis or have it adjusted. The tourist levy and the Airbnb, does this have a legal basis? Is the tourist tax a discussion as part of the work group for tax reform? The Minister of Finance should have responded to this. If not, again, I will work with him to make sure that this is responded to in writing. What work has TIAT done in regard to licensing for the legalization of cannabis? The Ministry of TIAT, as part of the Council of Ministers, approved the RFP and had the opportunities to put feedback in terms of licensing requirements and other economic consideration that would need to be researched. The questions from MP Ludmila de Wever, sorry. Economic growth disbursements of funds for schools. Why was it linked to the economic growth? The project for the schools was mentioned in the economic growth, for example, because the Sundale School uses their crops within their cooking program and by extension open their doors to the public on every Wednesday. So they make sales from those contributions to have those greenhouses and agriculture within the schools. Most elementary schools use their crops within the canteens for sale to students, but in particular to their breakfast program. Therefore, it is considered an economic growth opportunity for schools and economic relief program for the community, in particular younger kids. On a longer-term perspective, the intention of the objective of educating and stimulating our students in agriculture is to help and develop them to become farmers, sell their produce, expand their operations, which they will need to hire workers, thereby creating employment, which enables economic growth. Last year, the vendor village to move the vendors from the pond fill to a specific area, but the presentation, it refers to the CapEx project for the marketplace or vending village. Explain the link with Royal Caribbean Group. Can you please explain the link between the selling of the food and the marketplace project? Thank you, first of all, MP, for the question. This question was answered earlier in response to several questions, but again, it was to amend where the money was going and to have it reflected the correct way so it's more transparent. The bus terminal, but don't see it in the CapEx for the terminal to be built. The same answers above, that was answered in the past already, but it was an idea and a prospected plan. The funds will still have to be found for that. The new revenue stream, 600,000 revenue from the bus terminal, where does it come from? The bus terminal will not have any revenue generated from it. MP George Pontiflet, the status of the CGB, how far is it? The country package measures H2 regarding reform of the gaming and gambling sector is on target. A request for the proposal is pending decision making from the writing of a business plan for the Sint Maarten Gaming Authority. A legislative lawyer has also been contracted and paid for by the TWO to assist Sint Maarten in the Gaming Authority working group in drafting the national ordinance, regulations, and national decrees, as well as to make amendments to related ordinances. The budget of 175,000 is primarily allocated to the hiring of the legal expert to support that working group. MP Siddharth Bajlani, is your mission and vision shared with your SGs? How often is it shared? Yes, the mission and vision is shared on the mission and objectives of the ministry, the Minister of TIAT, and I can also find myself in this mission and vision. So both the SG and the Minister of TIAT, along with our team, are all on the same page, and we are having at least one monthly meeting, if not more, to ensure we stay aligned. 54 persons concluded the exam in the automatic car. Is the ministry promoting this, and how? The Ministry of TIAT started promoting the possibility of taking the practical exam in a motor vehicle with automatic transmission since June 2022. The ministry has issued reminders of this option via the media since then, mostly recently in January 2023, and will continue to issue reminders to the public on a regular basis moving forward. Again, I thank my staff for finding the answers to the questions. Also thank the MPs for the questions and hoping to have answered all accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for the answers to those questions. I see we have several MPs wishing to speak. I go first to MP Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good night to you, the Honorable Minister and his support staff, my colleagues, and everyone. Good night, Minister, and through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to get right into the questions. A few questions I have for the Minister in particular, so I'm going to start. This one is concerning airlift. Airlift out of the U.S. to Sint Maarten is extremely high. A Miami ticket is now over $1,000 and sometimes almost $2,000 for an economy seat. What is the overall strategy of the Ministry of TIAT in relations or when it concerns airlift on a cheaper basis, cheaper level to Sint Maarten? Has the Ministry of TIAT engaged in any direct discussions with potential new airlift And I don't mean at trade shows, I mean direct one-on-one with any airline. What is the strategy to prevent further loss of PJIA's hub function in the region? In other words, what are you doing? How many airlines have the Minister of Former and current met with directly to discuss the high cost of tickets? Mr. Chairman, through you, the minister made mention earlier that when he was in Curacao, he spoke to the minister in relation to fuel. Wouldn't it be a good idea for the minister to also have a discussion with his counterpart in Curacao and also in Aruba concerning inter-travel airlift amongst the islands, given that tickets are also very high within the region traveling to as well? And this would be something that should be done, seeing that this government like to do things with a consensus. Mr. Chairman, through you, there is talk that Frontier Airlines might resume service June 15th. Can the minister confirm this? We have lost budget carriers. These budget carriers drove flight prices downwards. They forced major airlines like Delta and American and their international partners to compete on price, which was a win for consumers. Without competition, the pressure on those bigger carriers has gone. How will Sint Maarten address this issue? Do we have a plan to engage other low-cost airlines to keep prices competitive? If we do, please provide a copy of this plan. Are we redeveloping the marketing support agreements to joint marketing efforts to help ensure brand awareness? Are we thinking about subsidized route development to maintain airlift through the season? Are we in a position to make the final allocations for either approach when it comes to marketing and also subsidized route within the region for the season? I can also repeat the question, but for you, Minister, I'll send you these questions in writing. Just for this, Minister. Ain't gonna happen in OV. Mr. Chairman, through you, there's a lot of talk about lottery booths, but there's also something in particular that seems to be growing within districts, and certain districts in particular. Certain districts where predominantly people that look like me seems to be, that area seems to be flooded with now the casinos coming into those areas with gambling machines. Not just lottery booths, but gambling machines. Mr. Chairman, apparently we are bringing casinos to the districts. In addition to the lottery booths, we are now seeing an explosion of these gambling machines popping up in bars and in various districts. They are like electronic slot machines. Mr. Chairman, through you, does the company have a permit to operate these machines? And also, Mr. Chairman, can the minister explain what is needed, or if any is needed, in terms of a permit for these machines to be placed in any bar or any location or any corner under a tree once you have an electrical outlet? Also, Mr. Chairman, what kind of permit is needed? I think I said that already. Is the company allowed to set up these machines anywhere, and are they chosen specifically by individuals who already have lottery booths or casino licenses? How many of these machines are there? And list the locations and district areas. Through you, Mr. Chairman, if the minister don't know, he should send his staff, because I would want to believe that my good friend La Cruz passes that area every day where a few of those machines are located. Mr. Chairman, the issue that I have in particular with these gambling machines is that for me it's not a problem for adults, but many of these machines are in restaurants where you would have young children entering the restaurants. How is there a limit on how many machines there can bring or there can be in the country? Is the government aware that these machines are placed right next to the Sundial School in a snack bar and is frequented by students? Also, going up in the reward area as you pass the last bridge. So you're coming into St. Peter's. You pass Emilio Wilson, you pass St. John, the last bridge. There's a grocery store on the side. And that grocery store has a grocery store and a restaurant. And there is a slot machine right in there too as well. A number of students walk down that area in the afternoon. Why? Because many of them are going into Emilio Wilson to do football or to practice or go in the park. And if you look between 2:30 and 3:30, it's jam-packed. How are these machines controlled? If by economic controllers, please provide their last report on the operation of these machines. Now, Mr. Chairman, I'm not saying that I have an issue with the machine. I have an issue that the machines are placed in certain districts only, and primarily in districts that are frequented by school children, Mr. Chairman. And they're just popping up all over. I would like to move on also to Carnival. Mr. Chairman, through you, the SCDF since December 2023 has laid out its in-depth plans for Carnival on Sint Maarten, including a focus on culture and involvement of professionals on various levels of the festival. Has the government met with SCDF to discuss the plans to see how government can work along? The SCDF also publicly stated that government would be better to use marketing money to help its stakeholders, since marketing is not where the foundation needs help. Has the government met with SCDF on this proposal? Is the government willing to drop the old and outdated concept to give money for marketing and finally give money to help Carnival where it is needed most, which it's its operations? Mr. Chairman, the SCDF submitted an MOU with an agreement with the government, since 2015. Has the government invited the SCDF to discuss this MOU? Why can't the government sign an MOU with the Heineken Regatta? Why can the government sign the MOU with the Heineken Regatta and not with SCDF? I would like to know too. There are rumors that the government is still determined to establish some sort of entity to place over SCDF. Mr. Chairman, through you, I would like to know if this is true. And if it is, why? Mr. Chairman, the SCDF is a private foundation, not a government entity. How does the government see itself exercising any legal right over a legal established private foundation? How is the Culture Department cooperating with funding Carnival for 2023? The SCDF has asked the government to not grant any permits to certain events, that would conflict with Carnival events in the season. Has the government responded to this request? Mr. Chairman, the reason why I ask this question is because there are some good examples, and I understand that SCDF requested this. For example, there is a Queen show by a well-known group scheduled on the same day of Juna Carnival parade. Some of the parents involved in the Queen show are upset that their children wouldn't get a time or a chance to see the parade. Why would you schedule a Queen show on the same day of a parade, and the Carnival schedule has been out since November?
MP, just a question, because are some of those questions then also directed, for example, to Minister of ECYS and Justice in terms of the permits? Could a permit, for example, is granted?
Yeah, well, then he could ask them to whoever he wants.
So you would like the question from TIAT perspective to be answered, and then?
Well, you know, most of them are also interlinked to TIAT 2 as well.
Okay, understood.
It's Carnival. This is specifically for Carnival. That's TIAT. Yeah, well, he's going to discuss with the permit minister to get an answer, Mr. Chairman. I thank you. Don't do the work for the minister. Mr. Chairman, my last question. Why would you schedule a Queen show on the same day of the parade, and the carnival schedule has been out since November. I would want to believe that this is the point that the Carnival Committee has been making, and they see it unfair when they have asked that no permit should be granted during the carnival period of time. Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much, and I leave it right there.
Okay. MP, you mentioned the questions that you wrote you would send to the minister.
Most definitely.
But you also want those answers in writing?
You can send
or
them in
did-
writing.
Okay, so Minister.
Before the OVE, not like a day before, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Please let this be known.
I will make. I was going to make an announcement about that towards the end of the meeting, but members of parliament have discussed, being that there are several opportunities requested from the ministers to receive those answers in writing. We have requested from the government that they are with parliament by 12 noon on Thursday. Yes, and of course it will also form part of the report, which is also why it's important that we receive them by 12 noon on Thursday, else we would have a hard time getting them in time in the report. So that is once again communicated not just to the members of parliament, but minister to note any other questions must be with parliament by 12 noon on Thursday. Anything that the members of parliament say, you can send in writing. Next we have MP Westcott Williams, followed by MP Gums, and then MP Helga Martin.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman, and a good night. Mr. Chairman, I thank the Minister for his responses, and I would like to go into some of the following responses. And I want to start with the investment policy and diversification strategy for St. Maarten of December 2022. And my first question in this regard is whether there is a formal decision by the Council of Ministers adopting this policy and strategy. Question one. Secondly, does the minister not concur, or does the minister concur that such a policy should at least be formalized by means of a MB or een ministeriële beschikking, een ministeriële regeling, at least, is my question. In asking whether this policy has been approved by the Council of Ministers, did the Council of Ministers, upon its approval, designate an investment promotion agency according to the policy? So, has such a IPA been designated by the government of St. Maarten? If such an investment promotion agency has been designated, have they been charged with executing the policy? Is my question. And if they have been charged with executing this policy, first of all, have you selected someone? If, like has been alluded to, the agency is the EDC, have the articles of incorporation of the EDC been changed? And if they have, can we receive a copy of the current articles of incorporation of the EDC? Has the EDC been designated as the investment promotion agency? And if they have they followed one of the first recommendations of this policy that an investment board consisting of private and public sector stakeholders be established to provide guidance on a strategic level? So has this happened? Speaking about the EDC, its articles of incorporation, has a business plan been made by and or for the EDC? Who sits on the board? Is there a board of the EDC, and who sits on the board of the EDC? So if I can get a total picture, the investment and diversification policy, who has it been mandated to? What's the formal decision by the Council of Ministers regarding same? And if the EDC has been officially designated as the investment promotion agency for St. Maarten, then what's the status of that? Its articles of incorporation, its board, does it have a business plan? Secondly, Mr. Chairman, can the minister inform me when the changes to the LBHAM regarding the lottery sector has been publicized. So apparently, last year sometime, the LBAHAM, so the General Resolution Governing Lotteries, was amended. And when has that been publicized? And may we receive as Parliament the advice from the Council of Advice regarding same. What exactly is government's contribution, as has been touted on more than one occasion, to the farmers' market? So what part of the farmers' market is the government contributing, taking care of, promoting, etc.? Mr. Chairman, I didn't get the response regarding the book fair. I heard a lot, and 2020 and 2021, it was online, meetings were held, it was in February, and so was it concluded, and if it was, why was it concluded that the subsidy to the book fair organization, which has been there like forever, no longer will be given to the book fair organization? So from what I heard, I didn't understand why in 2023 there is no budget, or yes, no budget, no contribution for the book fair. And then I want to get it straight. So for the vendors village, it's another point, for the vendors village, which would have included the trucks on the food trucks on the pond fill, there is no land where these persons can be relocated to. Some time ago, before your term, before you took office, you being the minister, Mr. Chairman, there was this big issue because the vendors on the pond fill had to be moved. And at the time, they were consulted and were told they were going to be put in or near to the festival village. Is it still the intention to move the vendors from the ring road / pond fill? One. If not, can they stay there? Or will they be asked to leave? We don't have any land to designate for them. So what happens? Can they just remain there and, in other words, do their thing? So we're going to get the marketplace, so the marketplace right here, and we're going to have a location right behind the courthouse is a question. We're going to have the location of where the marketplace is right now, and then we're going to have where the taxi stand is right now, a little marketplace as well. Because by your predecessor, 3 locations for a marketplace were identified. 3 locations. So I'm wondering if those are the 3 that were identified as this one here, the second one, and a third one. And that was public information. There are 3 locations. At the time, even in the article, the area of these locations was mentioned. So we're going to have that, and we're going to have the taxi stand. That's going to happen based on the budget that we have right now. No ifs, no buts. Why do I continue to hear some reservation when a reference is made to the $350,000 by the Royal Caribbean Group? Why is it like a pledge? So the pledge is based on what? When we are ready to build a market, then the pledge will come in. And then I want to ask the minister, Mr. Chairman, following your visit to maybe the FCCA conference or one of those, in January, you made the following statement at the time. He looks forward to a follow-up Zoom meeting with Royal Caribbean Cruise Line concerning the new marketplace in Phillipsburg and continuing discussions on the proposed water park and boutique hotel, which are near final decisions. Did that Zoom meeting take place, and what was the conclusion regarding Royal Caribbean Cruise Line's pledge, commitment to the marketplace, and how did it tie in, and does it tie in, and if so, how, to the proposed water park and boutique hotel. This is my question regarding the marketplace. I just want to know if the marketplace is going to come regardless to what. We have it in the budget. It is a capital expense, and it's going to happen. And why do I get a certain reservation when it comes to the pledge by Royal Caribbean Group? Mr. Chairman, I think I got all the questions that I would like answered at this moment on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. And I just want to confirm, would you like the minister to return with the answers, or are you okay to receive them in writing? Okay to receive them. Thank you for your indulgence. And next we have MP Gums.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to first state some of my questions I can get in writing, but the first one is more of a clarification, and I'd like an answer right away if possible, because then I might have another question. So through you, Mr. Chairman, to the minister, did you mention, Minister, that you'd ask BDO for an advice on something? It wasn't my question, but I'm just trying to, I kind of missed the answer that you were giving. And I think I heard that you would ask BDO for an advice on something. So if you could just repeat what that was actually about.
So you need that answer to have your
because then I might have
follow-ups.
another question.
While the minister is looking for that, then let me go to MP Grisha Heilige Martin and
Sure.
come back to that answer. MP Grisha Heilige Martin, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. And good evening to the minister and his support staff. Good evening to everyone present and listening and tuning in online. I just have a few clarification questions through you, Mr. Chairman, for the minister regarding the tariff 60. I mean, I asked the minister what's the status on that, but the minister responds and says that minister before that it was his initiative. Seeing that it was his initiative first, what happened then? What happened with him working on tariff 60? Because I wasn't clear. I think the minister stated that the minister that was there was working on that. Maybe he should clarify that for me, and I would like to know what was the reason and what was the hold-up. Why was it not executed then? Just for clarification's sake. And also, it was stated that it is on hold. Does that mean that they do have plans to execute tariff 60 for the seniors? And if so, how long can we wait? How long would we need? Would it be done at least by mid-year? Can I get like a deadline as to how soon they can literally switch the tariff for the seniors, so tariff 60? So I want a deadline, like do they need another 3 months to get over this situation that they're in to make a change? I just need a little deadline, so at least I can inform my seniors accordingly for their relief, real relief. I have another question pertaining to, it breaks my heart, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sure it does yours too, when you see a cut in the marketing budget. It breaks my heart. A cut of 170,000, or about 180,000 guilders. I just heard the minister through you, Mr. Chair, mention that he's going to up the social media efforts. Someone, I don't know which one of the MPs made mention of how many likes and followers. Well, Sint Maarten being the last with the least likes and followers online on social media. But I see here Statistiek Onderzoek Algemeen, which is the online market research. Is that what is going to be used for social media? Because that dropped from 200,000 guilders to now 48,000 guilders. How are we going to do that with such a major decrease? Am I reading it correctly? Am I looking at the wrong line item? I'd like to have some clarifications on that, please, Mr. Chairman. And there was one more thing I needed clarity on. I'll just leave it for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And I can have them in writing, not a problem.
Thank you for your questions. I see the minister is still searching for that answer, so I'll go to the next speaker, which is MP De Wever.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just in response to the clarification, additional questions from MP Heilige Martin. What I can say with certainty, considering my previous role, is that there is no senior relief that can be given to customers of GB without an approved budget. Given the financial situation, that is a 100% certainty. So if there's another sort of regulation where there is a tariff that is set by the Ministry of TEAT which overrides that and makes it verplicht or required that only seniors over the age of 60 do not pay the rate that we see on our invoices. They will pay only a 25-cent fee. Then that's a different discussion. So that is a tariff that is set by the Minister of TEAT versus a senior relief, which is built into the budget of GB and then applied as a discount to seniors who have registered as customers as seniors to receive that discount at GB. So I just wanted to, it's not really a question, but more clarification for everyone so they know that difference. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification or comment, MP De Weaver. Minister, are you ready to follow up with that clarification from MP Gums? Yes? Then we'll go to you and then back to MP Gums.
So clarification for MP Gums, the BDO meeting that I had was also concerning, it came up in the meeting with the Starlink, so the satellite internet, and how they are proceeding with it in Curacao and what their plans are and what we could possibly do here to kind of make it work or not make it work or stop it or to go ahead to see how we're going to go in that direction or which direction we're going to go into.
Okay, thank you, Minister,
Happy
for
Gums?
clarifying. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Minister, for clarifying that, because then my next question is, wouldn't BTP as the regulator, whether here or in Curacao, be the sort of final say so, and did they provide you with a study about Starlink, so about its potential accessibility, etc.? So that's one question. I can get it in writing, that's okay. I can get it in writing, and for the rest, I had one question about the marketing agreements that we have with certain promotional companies. What sort of evaluation methods is the ministry and or the tourist office using to determine if we're receiving sufficient ROI from those contracts? For example, do we evaluate if they have enough knowledge about Sint Maarten, if they're communicating information to agents in various countries about the island and its upcoming events in a timely manner? Now, I ask that because I've seen what I expect to be a promotional email from the rep agency in the Netherlands highlighting Heineken Regatta and Essex Music Festival to agents, but the email was sent on the 2nd of March, and Heineken Regatta started the 5th. So for me, that's a bit of a red flag that maybe there's a disconnect somewhere in terms of what information is getting out to agents as it has to be. Regarding the bus terminal, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister, with the amount of work that you've done so far regarding the decree on lotteries, I just wanted to ask, is similar work being done to kind of clear up the murkiness of public transportation? So what, for example, is the official legality on having a business license that holds and operates multiple bus licenses? Because historically, that's been one of the biggest issues facing our ability to actually streamline public transportation. So some clarity on that. And finally, how many such clusters exist where there's one business license that then holds and operates multiple bus licenses? So thank you, Mr. Chairman. That'll be all for me.
Thank you, MP Gums. I will check if there are any further questions to the Minister of TEAT at this time. I see no need. Minister, I do have 2 questions which I also can receive in writing, as it would assist me to prepare for the public meeting. And this has to do with the tourism budget. Indeed, I have continued to make amendments to the budget that is presented to us by the government with regards to tourism marketing. And it seems every time I have discussed this with the CFT, while they may imply that they don't directly state that you need to cut the tourism budgets, they don't state it. It is definitely implied when you read their quarterly reports and their budgetary advice, because they look at things like non-essential service. In the tourism industry, we would say obviously marketing is essential, but when it comes to now you suddenly have to find 50 million cut, this is where these cuts end up happening. However, also in discussions with the CFT, I said, is there a possibility to make investments in tourism? It's something that we haven't done before. However, it's something that perhaps can help because then it does not come out of our operational budget. And investments in the intellectual property of St. Maarten as well as the product itself, can that be done? And that was actually well received in our discussions with the CFT. So my question is, is the minister aware of a plan that was put together by various stakeholders, presented to the NRPB, and vetted by the NRPB, but for whatever reason, it did not materialize and did not go forward, mostly to do with the fact that, from what I understood, the World Bank Trust Fund was already allocated. However, the plan in and of itself, I've read the plan, and I think it's a good one. It puts up approximately 9 million guilders towards investments in tourism. This is not something that is currently budgeted for. So earlier in the meeting, I did ask the Minister of Finance, what are the requirements for a capital budget, and what is our current space in terms of being able to implement more capital expenditures? And according to the minister, we are at a 56% rate, where Curacao is at 82%, and Aruba is close to 100. The basic conditions are for getting it is that it should be well planned out, it should be very clear, it should follow the new format that the budget has had, etc. I say all of this to say, would the minister and the ministry be very receptive to an amendment that would make such a plan possible, where investments can now be made in our tourism product, in our intellectual property, especially if it comes from the plan that I described earlier from the NRPB. I would ask the minister if he can get in touch with the NRPB head, Mr. Connor, who is also a former minister of tourism and is very familiar with it. And if that can be looked at and maybe a response given as to the ministry's thoughts on that plan and whether it is something that is still valid. The plan was produced in 2021, so I do think it is. But I would like the ministry's look at that to see if that is something that we can add to the budget as investments in tourism. Because while it's important to do our sort of marketing via our operational budget, I believe it's time that we make a significant investment in our tourism product as a whole by the means of that plan that was outlined. Another issue that has come up many times with the tourist department, and an example, you actually saw the symptom of probably why this happened when MP Gums mentioned that an email will go out on March 2nd to promote things that are happening now. I am willing to bet that that is often because these firms who are supposed to be paid on a quarterly basis, when they don't receive their money, they can get disgruntled, they're going to go slow, or they pretty much stop working because they are companies that need to be paid. I've experienced this firsthand. And Minister, I would like to know if you've investigated the bottlenecks in getting these firms paid on time. Because if they are not paid, for example, the social media boosting that they're supposed to do, at least at the time when I was there, it came to the point where they were no longer fronting, let's say the 10 or 15,000 that they would normally invest in boosting a social media page. They would front it in the beginning, but because it would now inflate on their own credit cards to 40, 50,000 and payments would be late, I know they had stopped that altogether. And I can imagine if the Treasury, Finance, TIAT, etc. are not working together to make sure they get paid on time, you're going to have those issues with your international marketing partners. Minister, I also agree definitely with MP Emmanuel, where he spoke about the importance of the minister meeting with airlines. Unfortunately, I'm well aware that there is an important event, I think, from my perspective as an aviation enthusiast, probably the most important event a minister should attend, which is Roots Americas. Roots Americas is pretty much a speed dating platform for ministers to meet face-to-face with every airline you basically want. That is supposed to take place, I believe, on the 21st of March, and I don't know, being that we're handling the budget debate, if you would be able to attend. But I would personally recommend, nonetheless, some of the key airlines that the minister should consider meeting with, because these are things that are that have been in plans for many years, but I can imagine with COVID-19 that might have been stalled. Southwest Airlines to open the SXM Dallas route. American Airlines, there was an interest in reinstating the overnight flight, so that you have that late option to come to Sint Maarten and that early option to leave. Avianca Airlines has been knocking on our door for many years to start the Bogota-Sint Maarten route. Delta has been looking to expand the hub functionality between our hub and their Atlanta hub. There's also that strategic aspect of their partnership with KLM. So that is something I would like the minister to also look into. And Air Antigua as a possible hub partner for their new flights that they will be starting between, opening routes between Africa and the Caribbean. They too are looking for a larger hub partner within the Caribbean to justify, let's say, more of the regional flights where if you're bringing 200 people from Africa, likelihood they don't all want to stay in Antigua. They're going to be looking for connections. That's where Win Air can come into play. That's where St. Maarten's hub function can come into play. So those are the airlines I would like the minister to please pay additional attention to. There was one other question. Minister, I took note of your answer regarding the adjustments you would make. I was very appreciative of the proposal you made in terms of the need for a bus terminal. I've taken note of that, and I see that your intention would be to bring a note of amendment to make sure that it's more better elucidated, as was suggested by various MPs in terms of the marketplace. But I do believe if you can please send to Parliament any detailed plans you have regarding the bus terminal aspect, I think that's something that the Parliament should also consider seeing if we can get it, although it was a proposal, you mentioned it was an option. But if it is so valuable as you've described, then maybe it shouldn't be an option. Maybe it's something we should implement within the budget at this time. So members of Parliament have still room to make such amendments. So I would like to get details on those plans, because as was said and described by both the CFT and the Minister of Finance, the key to be able to getting such projects approved is that there must be as much detailed plans, realistic plans as possible to make it a reality. So if I can receive that in writing, then that is something I can consider seeking the support of my colleague members of Parliament to have it amended into the budget. That would be, oh, there's one more question. The BTP and their contribution to the coffers of the government of Sint Maarten. This has been an issue that comes up often with regards to the budget of Sint Maarten. In this case of BTP, we don't really speak of a dividend, because if you look at where the law of BTP is structured, it is really just supposed to be a cashier for the government. They're supposed to collect, reduce their expenses, and the rest go to the government. I'm oversimplifying it, but in essence, to make the difference between a government-owned company that can then choose to invest in this and invest in that, but they are a ZBO, where under the articles, I believe from 18 to 20, it describes what the procedure should be to receive funds from this entity. Where are we with finally getting money from this entity? Where is BTP with being able to collect from what they are owed? I would like some information from that, also in writing, in preparation for the public meeting. Members of Parliament, it is now 9 p.m. Our intention was to end this meeting by 9 p.m. today. Allow me 1 minute adjournment so I can describe what will happen in the follow-up of this meeting. Meeting adjourned. Kelly? Good evening once again. A little more than a minute to verify the continuation of this meeting. Members of Parliament, we will continue the meeting tomorrow at 10:30 a.m., so not 10 a.m. We will continue at 10:30, as there are some members who, various members actually, who wish to attend a funeral at least briefly at 10 a.m. So we will start at 10:30 a.m. We also have the St. Joseph School who would be here at 10:30. So we do ask, where possible, if members of Parliament, we can try to be on time. Also, once again, I wish to remind at least the members of Parliament, but also the government, that it is very important that we receive all answers that were requested to be, that were allowed to be sent in writing, to be with the Parliament no later than 12 noon, as this forms a part of the note following the report, and that is a critical aspect, or it is necessary in order to go to the public meeting. So for all ministers, yourself included, Honorable Minister of TIAT, we ask you to ensure that the questions that you just received, that we have them all in writing before 12 noon on Thursday. Members of Parliament, tomorrow we will start at 10:30 with the Minister of ECYS, followed by the Minister of Justice, followed by the Honorable Prime Minister, who will close the Budget Debate Central Committee meeting. So, members of Parliament, I thank you for your participation here today in this Central Committee meeting handling of the budget, and we'll see you all tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Meeting adjourned.